Well, for a period of time between this one and the previous movie, it seemed like things for the series were beginning to turn around. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another installment in my Texas Chainsaw Massacre review series, where I go through all the other Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies in the lead up to the new film. And today we're talking about the prequel to the remake, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it. And make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content like reviews and rankings on a near-daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. This focuses on two brothers who, before being sent to serve in Vietnam, take one last road trip with their girlfriends. But when they get into an accident, a terrifying experience will take them to a secluded house of horrors with a chainsaw-wielding killer. So, as I've been doing with the other reviews in this series, this will get into spoiler territory. So, if you haven't seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning and you wish to know nothing, this is your spoiler warning. Go watch the movie, then come back to this. But now that you've been warned, here we go. Jonathan Liebesman, who would later go on to helm films like Battle Los Angeles, Wrath of the Titans, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, takes over as director from Marcus Nispel, with this being the only other entry in this franchise produced by Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes. There was initially a third entry planned, but while this wasn't a box office failure, it did only gross half of what its predecessor made, so that scrapped any future plans for them. Although similar to the 2003 film, and really all these other entries besides the first, this didn't really receive great reviews. In fact, I think this is one of the lowest rated of all these movies, but I gotta say, similar to its predecessor, I don't think this one is that bad. Now, it's not great either. Like, I thought the 2003 film was great and highly underrated. I think this is a step down from that film, but it's enjoyable enough overall, and I think it's a little underrated too. Honestly, I think if you're in the camp of liking that 2003 film like I did, I'd find it hard to believe you wouldn't like this either, even if only by just a little. Because the one thing that I'll commend this for, it's the fact that it maintains a nice tonal consistency with that film. The 2003 film maintained that grisly, grimy feel of the 1974 film, but gave it a fresh, modern visual update that would forego the super low budget feel while still making it feel terrifying. And this had that exact same style to it. This is another bloody, brutal entry in this franchise that will have slasher fans delighted. Like many other slasher movies, the main reason fans of this series keep tuning into each new installment is because they want to see Leatherface wreak havoc, and we get plenty of that here. In fact, this is probably one of the only films where Leatherface is featured the most prominently. And you must be thinking, what do I mean by that? Because isn't Leatherface the main villain of these movies? Well, no. I've said this before, but while Leatherface is the, face of the franchise, and he's the one immediately associated with it, and he's the only character who's in every single entry, he's not really always the main villain, if at all. He's always acting under the orders of someone else in each movie, always some other member of his family. And in this case, similar to the 2003 film, it's Arlie Ermey as Sheriff Hoyt, who is revealed to be Leatherface's adopted brother, and is actually a guy named Charlie Hewitt, who killed the real Sheriff Hoyt and assumed his identity. And we'll come back to him in a minute. But even with this keeping that same element that Leatherface is under someone's orders, this puts him a little more front and center. We never really got too much information on this character's backstory, other than that he's this chainsaw-wielding man with mental health issues who has a sadistic family and would often be the main one chasing the protagonist down so he can bring them to his family. But this is the first time any of the films would ever attempt to give him some sort of death. In this case, he was abandoned not too long after his mother died, giving birth to him, and he's adopted by a family known as the Hewitts instead of the Sawyers, as we've seen in the previous versions. And we get quite a few sequences that are through their point of view, showcasing why they are the way they are. In fact, one can argue that they're more of the main characters of this movie, rather than the group of people who have the unfortunate luck of running into them. This feels more like it's their movie than anything, and that can be for better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Now, on one hand, this does give us a much better insight into these characters, which we never got before in the series. Like I said, typically with these movies, all you really know when it comes to the Sawyers or the Slaughters, or in this case the Hewitts, was that they're out of their minds, they're sadistic, they're evil, and there's not much more to them. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because there have been movies with villains who are just pure evil and we don't learn much else about them, and it works in its execution, like Halloween. But I do appreciate this film, now being the sixth in this franchise, at least trying to flesh things out with these characters and expand on them and do something different. Now, I mean, because of the way it's set up, it does mean we see a lot of events through the eyes of these brutal killers, so it doesn't leave us much room to work with as far as sympathetic characters, and this doesn't justify their actions. But I do appreciate how this film tried doing something different while still maintaining that tonal consistency with the 2003 film. Now, to be clear, because of this slight shift in perspective, it doesn't mean we don't get any sympathetic characters whatsoever. Like any other Texas Chainsaw movies, and like I said in the plot synopsis, this does once again contain a group of young people who get stuck on the road and wind up coming face to face with these villains. And in this case, it's Jordana Brewster as Chrissy, who's the girlfriend of Eric, played by Matt Bomer, along with Taylor Hanley as his brother Dean, and Diora Baird as his girlfriend Bailey. And for this group of characters, I will say that, unlike some of the sequels to the original movie, and even with the original movie itself, the performances by everyone here were fine. There are little dynamics among each of the group, and they all have their chemistry with one another, so that was a nice plus. But in terms of writing, there's really no standouts here. Not that these movies are known for having standout, deeply layered characters, but this kind of goes back to something we've seen in previous installments where the protagonists wind up being nothing more than bodies for Leatherface and his family. And again, if that's all you want from these movies is to see Leatherface showing up and causing absolute chaos, then you're not going to care about this stuff. And this doesn't ruin the movie for me or anything. Like I said, I still like this enough overall and found it entertaining. It's just that with any movie, whether it be horror, drama, comedy, whatever it is, you want characters who you can feel some connection with so that when we get to these higher stakes moments later on where they have to face some sort of conflict, you feel it. It doesn't even need to be much, just something. But here, these are just typical generic slasher movie protagonists who only got a decent enough boost because of their respective actors and not because of the writing. So when we get to all the usual moments of them going up against the Hewitts later on, you only feel so much. Outside of knowing these brothers were going to enlist in the war, the characterization's pretty bare bones here. And the idea that they're all just bodies for these villains is further solidified by the ending. I mean, of all these movies, this one probably has the biggest downer of an ending because it's one of the only ones where literally every protagonist dies. Most of these movies usually end with at least one other person getting away, from Sally Hardesty to Stretch to many others. But this is one of the only ones where it ends with the death of literally everyone, which I guess is simply due to it being a prequel and we know that Leatherface is going to continue wreaking havoc essentially undetected for this period of time between this and the 2003 film. Though, then again, they really didn't even have to do that, considering in a lot of these other movies, it's always revealed Leatherface somehow survived the events of the film along with our protagonist. I guess in keeping with the whole mission of the film, it was just to do something different for once, but either way, it further solidifies my point that this really only goes so far emotionally due to the shift in perspective and the lack of any well-written, sympathetic characters. We got a lot for the villains, but not so much for the protagonists, and we see that especially in this ending. But speaking of well-written villains, I've yet to mention the one element of this film that's easily the strongest element, similar to the 2003 film, and that's once again R. Lee Ermey. Like I said in my review of the 2003 movie, he's one of the most terrorizing villains in this entire franchise, and that's once again apparent here. It's essentially R. Lee Ermey getting to do what he does best and playing to all his strengths, just channeled into something much more sinister, but it works. He doesn't get a moment that's quite as intense as the scene in the 2003 film with Jonathan Tucker in the van, but he's still a consistently strong presence who adds an extra layer of menace to each scene he's in, once again even managing to outshine Leatherface himself. And what's cool is, as I said towards the beginning of this review, we do get a better look into why he is the way it is. It doesn't make us suddenly feel sympathy for the guy, in fact it just makes it even clearer that he's just a really horrible person, but seeing R. Lee Ermey act the hell out of some of these moments as he explains what brought him to this moment, like I said, it just adds an extra layer of tension to each scene, giving the movie an overall eerier feel, which goes to show how great of an actor he is. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, isn't one of the stronger entries in the series due to the fact that it's mostly from the point of view of the antagonists, and we once again don't really have any interesting protagonists to follow, but it's still not a bad time overall. It once again delivers on what most people want to see in the series, which is Leatherface just wreaking havoc. Plus, it maintains the dark, grisly tone that was consistent with the first film, with some brutal moments that slasher fans will certainly enjoy, especially whenever Arlie Ermey gets involved. It's not on the same level as the 2003 film, but you also can't go wrong with it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, gets a 6.5 out of 10. Not bad overall. Even with it not being as good as the 2003 film, I still think, like that film, this is much better than people give it credit for. But moving right along, up next will be my review of another sequel to the original film, Texas Chainsaw. Though in the meantime, let me know, did you see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you think this really is as bad as everyone says it is, or do you not mind it so much? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.